Welcome to video 3 of chapter 1. In this video, we will answer the learning question, what are the contexts for child development? And context, as it says here, is just a broad term that includes all of the settings in which development occurs. So this would include, such things as the family. You develop within the context of your family and the context of your particular community or neighborhood. And the school you attend is another context for development. The particular country that you live in is a context for development. And so it is all the different settings that a child would find themselves in that will affect how they develop. And you know, there are just hundreds or thousands of contexts of development, really, if you look at it. I mean, the playground in your neighborhood is a context for development. The healthcare services that you attend or have available is a context for development. The daycare that a child goes to is a context for development. So I mean, any setting that where development takes place is a context. We're going to look at a few here, a few of the major ones. They will be covered in later parts of the textbook as well. So I'm just gonna quickly introduce a few different contexts of development at this point. So let's begin with families. This is obviously a very important context of development. As it says here, families are responsible for the socialization of children. So socialization means that, the family is responsible for instilling the norms and the attitudes and the beliefs of the culture into their children. So the parents, teach the children the rules and the norms of the particular culture they're growing up in. You teach your children manners. You teach them to stand in line, and do you teach them eventually to walk on the right side and drive on the right side of the road, and so it's basically the families teach the children what they need to know to be good members of the particular society they're growing up within. Now, one major factor that affects the context of the family is the resources that they have available. So this is a variable that I'll come back to many times throughout the book, socioeconomic status, which refers to, it's really a combination of your income level, your education, and your particular occupation. So this context will be a very important context, or this variable of families will be very important because it affects the amount of resources that a family has to support their children's development. And so there'll be many times during the course of this class that where I do comparisons between low income families versus middle income families. That's one of the standard comparisons that we'll see. At times I'll speak about families in poverty, which is kind of like low income. So you have like poverty, you have low income, you have middle income, and then you have high income or wealthy families. And the children develop differently depending on the family's SES status, their socioeconomic status. It's mainly, although it includes education and occupation, it's mainly like how much money do you have? What mainly income level and how much money the family has to survive. Okay. A second context of development is the school system that your children attend. They're certainly another important context for development, and some of the things that the school teaches the child that are needed to flourish and do well within the society or the culture is, first of all, academic skills that are needed for that particular society. So we teach our children, reading and writing and arithmetic, because these are important tools within our culture. Also, schools also teach civic socialization. All right, and right, not necessarily teach. I mean, sometimes it's explicitly taught, but even when it's not explicitly taught, schools, are trying to help develop the morality of the children that attend the schools, and to make them into, they try to help make them into good citizens. And that's what civic socialization is all about. It's similar to the socialization I talked about parents doing, but schools are doing a similar kind of thing and teaching them the rules of how to interact with others in within our culture and within our society. Okay, let's go on. Community is another context for development. So the characteristics of the community in which children live impact many aspects of development. So a couple of examples are, it will impact the quality of the schools. Not surprisingly, poorer communities tend to have poorer schools. They get less qualified teachers often. They have fewer resources available. They might have, far less things like computers, for instance, within the school, lower quality books and things like that. So, we'd like to think that everyone has the same shot at a good education, but it certainly isn't really true. And those that grow up in the lower socioeconomic status tend to have their children attend lower quality schools because of the communities that these children are growing up in. Neighborhood safety is another aspect of the community that will affect the development of children. So it's going to affect how much time the children spend outside of their homes, for instance. How is it that they spend their time? And that's often dependent on the safety of the neighborhood. Is there a safe and clean, park for them to attend, or a playground for them to attend, for instance? Are there activities within the community for children or adolescents to attend? Is there a library available? So the quality of a community or a neighborhood it really does have a lot of effects on the activities that children do on a day-by-day basis. And finally, we have the context of culture. So research shows that there are some similarities in children's development across cultures, but there's also some very important differences between cultures. We will do a comparison at times of cultures. Okay, sorry, I was in the middle of a sentence. I had to pause the recording. My dogs were going crazy. I think another dog went by or something. And anyways, so I was saying, yeah, the throughout the course we are going to compare different cultures, and in particular, one important distinction is between individualistic versus collectivist cultures. And there'll be a number of times I refer to these terms. An individualistic society is one in which promotes individual accomplishments and individual freedoms and individual uniqueness. This is very much our society here within the US. Many experts would consider the United States to be the most individualistic culture in the world. Um, we really value individual rights and individual freedoms, and we promote uniqueness. We're fine with children or adolescents expressing themselves in very unique ways. We don't force them to try to fit in with the group. So this is, in a culture like the United States, that we tend to, because we're individualistic in nature, we tend to believe, for instance, that children are, the responsibility just of their parents. If these parents have children, well, you know, then those parents are completely responsible for everything to do with the children, and including their health care and their well-being. And if they can't afford them, they shouldn't have had them. And this is very typical within an individualistic society. That whereas in a collectivist society, collectivism is very much about, the fitting into the groups that you're a part of. The that you kind of work together as a team, that you're all part of a larger group. And so, like, in a collectivist society, and some examples would be like a lot of the Eastern Asian countries are very much collectivist in nature. Um, and in a collectivist society, the belief is that in a sense, we're all responsible for helping one another, and that if there are children in need, they're kind of the responsibility of everyone in the community. There's that saying, it takes a community to raise a child. Well, that's very much a collectivist attitude. Um, and so what you find is that in a collectivist society, they're much more likely to have universal health care for everyone. Um, they will tend to try to have more equal quality of schools in every neighborhood, rather than poor neighborhoods having poor schools and richer neighborhoods having the best schools. I mean, like, it's about kind of, you know, I I don't want to use the term socialism because a lot of people don't like that term, but it is about kind of the spreading the wealth around a little bit more, not, and also that we're all in it together. And so in a collectivist society, it's they're part of their socialization process is learning to fit into their place in society. They don't promote uniqueness, they typically don't want the children or adolescents to stand out, or even their adults. I mean, as they are all members of groups in a sense. And it's easy sometimes to be a member of one type of society and to, kind of look at the other one and say, well, I don't like those ideas. But there are a lot of strengths and weaknesses to both types of systems. Um, just to give you an example closer to home, I mean, within the United States, if you were to look at something like the Amish community, they're very much a collectivist society. Within our larger culture of individualism, they are a collectivist society. They build their homes together, and they gather as a group. When there's a new birth, and if somebody dies, I mean, it's not just the responsibility of the remaining family. Everyone would kind of help with the expenses and the care for the deceased. I mean, it's about sharing and sharing the responsibilities among many, rather than just saying this is your responsibility, as an individual. So there are strengths and weaknesses. I'll do some comparisons at times throughout the course. Um, some countries, by the way, are in between the two. Like, it's not all or nothing, all one way or the other. It's kind of like a continuum from, more individualistic to more collectivist, and countries fall at different points all the way through. So, like, for instance, Canada is still an individualistic country, but it's less so than the United States. It has more collectivist ideas within it, for instance. Um, Okay, and that will conclude video 3 from chapter 1.